Have you ever wondered if a single word could completely transform your life? What if the key to unlocking hidden doors, both seen and unseen, was not a complex strategy or a secret ritual, but something so simple, so profound, that most of us overlook it every day? That word is thank you. Spoken with true feeling and understanding, it carries a spiritual power capable of shifting your reality. This is not about politeness or empty social conventions. It's about a force that resonates with the deepest laws of the universe. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Gratitude is often misunderstood. We are taught to say thanks out of habit, as a matter of good manners. But real gratitude goes far beyond a polite phrase. It's not just a moral virtue, it's a spiritual technology, a frequency of the soul that aligns you with divine order. When you truly embody gratitude, you are not just acknowledging something good. You are tuning into the very energy that creates and sustains life itself. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever felt that shift in energy the moment you stopped complaining and genuinely gave thanks, even for the smallest things? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. Gratitude, when felt deeply and consciously, has the power to open doors you never knew existed. It's like a key that turns in a lock, allowing you to step into a higher awareness of your purpose and your connection to the universe. Imagine for a moment that everything you desire, peace, abundance, joy, already exists, waiting for you to recognize it. Gratitude is the bridge between what you see and what is yet to come. Think about it. How often do we confuse abundance with accumulation, or happiness with consumption? We live in a world that measures success by how much we control or possess, but true abundance flows when we recognize the good that's already here. Gratitude transforms your perception. It is the inner vibration that says, I am already connected to everything I need. And when you radiate this frequency, the universe responds. Have you noticed how life seems to give more to those who are thankful for even the little they have? What makes gratitude so powerful is that it shifts you from a mindset of lack to one of wholeness. You stop chasing and start receiving because your energy aligns with what is already abundant. This is not about ignoring challenges or pretending that problems don't exist. It's about seeing beyond them, recognizing that even in the midst of difficulties, there is always something to appreciate. And that simple shift changes everything. Imagine waking up each day and saying thank you with your whole heart, not because everything is perfect, but because you trust that life is unfolding exactly as it should. That trust opens doors that logic alone can't explain. It's not magic, but it feels magical when you experience it. What if all you needed to change your current situation was to start with one word, sincerely felt? Could it be that simple? In this journey, we'll explore how gratitude is more than just a fleeting emotion. It's a state of being, a spiritual alignment that has the power to create real transformation. And as we dive deeper, you'll see why this seemingly simple act is at the heart of every great spiritual teaching, from ancient wisdom to modern insights. Stay with me, because this is only the beginning. We're about to uncover the hidden power of thank you and how this single word can shape the reality you live in. Are you ready to see what happens when gratitude becomes more than just a habit? Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what we're talking about here isn't just a feel-good concept, it's a radical shift in how reality works. Most people have been taught that gratitude is something you express after things go right. You get the job, you say thank you. You receive the gift, you smile in appreciation. It seems obvious, but what if we've had it backwards all along? What if gratitude isn't the response to the blessing, but the energy that makes the blessing possible in the first place? This is the hidden truth behind the spiritual law that governs manifestation. When you wait for the outer world to give you reasons to be thankful, you're placing yourself in a reactive mindset. You're waiting on life, but the soul isn't meant to wait. It's meant to create. And creation begins with an internal state of alignment, of trust, of certainty, of gratitude, real gratitude, not the mechanical kind that's muttered from routine, but the kind that bubbles up from a deep knowing that what you desire is already on its way, because it already exists on the level of possibility. Imagine your mind as a broadcasting tower, constantly emitting signals into the field of reality. Every thought, every emotion, every intention becomes a frequency. And gratitude? Gratitude is one of the highest, clearest signals you can send. It doesn't beg. It doesn't negotiate. It declares. It says, I already have what I need. I already am what I seek. That energy draws things in, not because the universe is impressed, but because it's aligned. Think about how much time we waste waiting for things to change so we can finally feel better. We bargain with life. Once I get this, then I'll feel grateful. Once this happens, then I'll be at peace. But transformation doesn't begin on the outside. It begins in the subtle realm of awareness, where decisions are made not from logic alone, but from a deeper intelligence, the one that whispers truth before facts have time to catch up. This is the behind-the-scenes mechanism most people never realize is operating. Gratitude is not just emotional, it's vibrational. It shifts your energetic field, and that shift reorders what's possible. That's why someone can start giving thanks for something they haven't yet seen, and soon life begins to mirror back new outcomes, not because they tricked the system, but because they finally aligned with it. And here's where it gets even more powerful. Living in gratitude doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means recognizing the sacred value in everything, especially what doesn't make sense. When life feels uncertain, when doors close, when things fall apart, the natural impulse is to resist. But if you pause, and I mean really pause, and ask yourself, what is this showing me? You open space for revelation. Gratitude in those moments isn't blind optimism. It's a conscious choice to trust that what's unfolding serves your evolution, even if it's not immediately clear. There's a kind of quiet strength in that, a wisdom that doesn't depend on evidence, because it knows what's true beyond appearances. Gratitude is the language of that wisdom. It doesn't ask, why? It says thank you, even in the unknown, and that one decision shifts the entire trajectory of your experience. So when people ask, what can I do to change my life? The answer might be much simpler, and much more profound, than they expect. Begin by giving thanks, not as a trick, not to get something, but because something within you already knows that you're not waiting on life. Life is waiting on you to see differently, to feel differently, to respond differently. And the moment you do, everything begins to move. Write in the comments, this makes sense to me. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand the difference between saying thank you and actually being gratitude itself, everything begins to change. There's a quiet but powerful shift that happens when gratitude stops being something you do and becomes something you are. It's no longer an occasional reaction to something nice. It becomes your default presence in the world, your internal compass, the way your soul breathes. And here's where the transformation really starts. When you live from a place of deep, embodied gratitude, you're not waiting for things to go your way to feel peace. You're not seeking constant confirmation from the outside world. Instead, you become the source. You carry your own weather. Gratitude isn't a response to circumstances. It creates them. That's the hidden truth most people overlook. And yet, the moment you begin to understand it, you start to recognize the subtle power behind everything you think, feel, and expect. It's like stepping into a different frequency. Things don't just look different. They are different because your perception no longer filters through fear, lack, or need. It filters through appreciation, presence, and certainty. And when that happens, the world mirrors it back to you. Not because you're lucky, but because your inner reality is no longer broadcasting resistance. It's broadcasting readiness. This is exactly what the ancient teaching in Matthew 13:12 was pointing to. To the one who has, more will be given. On the surface, that might sound unfair, but dig a little deeper and you'll see. It has nothing to do with material possessions. It has everything to do with awareness. If you carry the consciousness of fullness, you draw in more to reflect it, not as reward, but as resonance. Life is always responding to what you're being, not what you're wishing for. That's why two people can live through the Same situation and experience completely different outcomes. One sees only what's missing, what's broken, what's not enough. The other finds value, growth, even beauty in the cracks, and in doing so, they magnetize more of that energy. The difference isn't the circumstances, it's the state of consciousness they inhabit. Think about it. How many times have you tried to fix your external reality, your job, your relationship, your finances, only to find yourself looping back into the same frustrations? Maybe it's not because the world is against you. Maybe it's because you've been trying to solve an internal imbalance with external tools. When you shift your inner state, when you become gratitude, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop fighting and start allowing. It's subtle, but powerful. And yes, it takes practice. It's not about ignoring what's wrong or pretending to be happy all the time. It's about training your awareness to see differently, to see from the soul, not just the senses. And when you do that, when you truly live in the recognition that what you carry inside is more powerful than what happens outside, you begin to create from a different level of reality altogether. So the invitation isn't just to say thank you. It's to become the kind of person who radiates thankfulness as a way of being, whose thoughts, actions, and energy reflect a deep inner wealth that no one can take away. That's the kind of presence that transforms everything it touches, not by force, but by frequency. Put down in the comments, "I'm also on this path." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because once you begin to grasp the real mechanics behind how your inner world creates your outer world, the game changes entirely. It's not just philosophy or poetic metaphor. It's how reality actually works, behind the scenes. Everything you can see, touch, and measure in your life is being upheld by something invisible. Your consciousness, the thoughts you repeat, the feelings you nurture, the mindset you live from. These aren't just passive ideas. They are creative forces shaping form. When the inner state is strong, anchored in clarity, peace, and gratitude, external circumstances have a way of reflecting that strength. They align. But when the internal source becomes chaotic, fearful, or numb, the outer structures begin to wobble. Things fall apart not because of random misfortune, but because the foundation that sustained them has weakened. This is one of the most powerful and overlooked truths in human experience. And it's also one of the most liberating, because if consciousness creates form, then it means you're never truly at the mercy of your environment. You're influencing it constantly, often without realizing it. This is where the impact of your dominant mental vibration becomes undeniable. The universe doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your frequency. You can say the right words, set goals, visualize success, but if your inner dialogue is saturated with doubt, fear, resentment, or lack, that's the energy being transmitted. And energy always seeks its match. That's why people who live in a mindset of scarcity often seem stuck in cycles of loss, because their vibration is tuned to exactly that. On the other hand, when you cultivate the energy of gratitude, not occasionally, but consistently, it sends out a different signal, a quieter one, a hum beneath the noise. And that signal says, I already recognize the good. I'm already in harmony with what I seek. That alignment doesn't just make you feel better, it creates better. It magnetizes opportunities, relationships, and experiences that echo the energy you're living from. You're not forcing outcomes. You're becoming the kind of person those outcomes naturally gravitate toward. And it's subtle. Sometimes the change doesn't show up in giant waves. Sometimes it arrives as a soft shift in perception, a little less resistance, a little more flow. You find yourself responding to life rather than reacting to it. You begin to notice things you used to overlook, moments of quiet beauty, synchronicities that seem to whisper, you're on the right path. And slowly, that path starts to reshape everything around you. What's crucial to understand is that gratitude isn't a trick to manipulate outcomes. It's not a spiritual shortcut or a way to hack your way into abundance. It's a return to coherence, a way of remembering your role in the creative process of life. You're not just here to observe reality. You're here to participate in it, to influence it, to co-create it with your thoughts, your presence, your emotional clarity. And gratitude is one of the most effective states for entering that co-creation consciously. It's not about pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing that your energy matters, your inner posture matters, and even when you can't control external events, you can always choose the frequency you want to meet them with. That choice is everything. It shapes the quality of your decisions. It determines what kind of thoughts you give weight to. It influences how the world shows up to meet you. Put down in the comments, "This feels true for me." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the metaphor we're about to explore isn't just poetic. It's profoundly revealing once you see how it applies to your own energy, your own life, your own decisions. Picture a lamp. Its design, its craftsmanship, even the quality of its bulb may be flawless. But if it's not connected to a power source, it offers nothing. No glow, no warmth, just potential without expression. That's what happens to a soul disconnected from gratitude. The light doesn't go out because something broke. It dims because the connection was lost. It's a subtle fading at first. You start moving through your days on autopilot, numbed by routine, focused only on what's missing, what isn't working. You begin to rely solely on external outcomes to validate your worth. And when those outcomes falter, as they inevitably will without a solid inner foundation, you feel yourself drifting. This isn't a punishment. It's a signal, a spiritual blinking light reminding you to plug back in. And gratitude is the cord. You don't need to be in a perfect life season to return to gratitude. In fact, it often shows its greatest power in the middle of the storm. Because gratitude, when real, doesn't ignore pain. It holds space for both joy and hardship. It allows you to look at what is, and still choose to recognize the sacredness within it. This is what reactivates your spiritual current. Not forced positivity, but honest alignment. And this is something Jesus deeply understood. His teachings weren't about superficial rituals or the appearance of righteousness. They were rooted in consciousness, in the inner state behind every word, every action, every miracle. When he said, "To the one who has, more will be given," it wasn't about ownership or quantity. It was about the fullness of being. He knew that external blessings, no matter how abundant, were unsustainable if not anchored in a vibrant, awakened inner life. There's something powerful in realizing that even what appears stable can dissolve, if not sustained by real awareness. You might build a relationship, a career, a reputation, but without spiritual grounding, it becomes fragile. That's not a threat. It's a gentle truth. Because once you know this, you also know where to focus your energy. Not on chasing outcomes, but on strengthening your connection, on staying plugged into what actually gives you light. And gratitude is the bridge back to that source. It's not just emotional, it's energetic. Every time you choose to recognize the good, to pause and appreciate the unseen grace moving through your life, you reinforce your current. You become more alive, more responsive, more resilient. And slowly, your life begins to feel less like something you're managing and more like something you're co-creating with a force that knows you, guides you, and wants your light to shine fully. This awareness invites a different kind of presence. You're no longer just reacting to circumstances. You're shaping them from a centered place. Gratitude becomes the quiet pulse behind your thoughts, your choices, your relationships. And in that state, your energy becomes magnetic, not just to things, but to meaning, to clarity, to the kind of peace that can't be manufactured. Put down in the comments, "I choose to stay connected." Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what we're touching here isn't just a spiritual idea. It's a precise mechanism, a kind of inner technology that few people realize they're holding in their own hands. And the key to activating it? Bless before you ask. It sounds simple, almost poetic, but it holds a level of transformation that can completely reshape your experience of life. When Jesus raised the bread to the sky and gave thanks before there was enough to feed the crowd, he wasn't making a symbolic gesture. He was demonstrating a law. He didn't plead for more. He didn't analyze the lack. He blessed what was there. He recognized its potential, aligned with the energy of abundance, and allowed that alignment to open the door to more. And that's the hidden truth. Blessing multiplies what you already have. Not by magic, but by resonance. You're not waiting for things to be enough before you can appreciate them. That waiting mindset keeps you stuck. It reinforces the illusion that your peace, your joy, your fulfillment are conditions to be met, instead of states you can choose and embody right now. That's why so many people, even when their lives improve externally, still feel like something's missing, because the inner shift never happened. The decision to bless, to see differently, to honor what is, that's what makes space for more. And this doesn't just live in ancient texts, it plays out in real lives every day. There was a woman struggling financially, working in a job she couldn't stand. Every day she complained. She felt stuck, underpaid, invisible, and the more she focused on how little she had, the heavier her life became. Until one conversation changed everything. She was invited to bless the very thing she despised, to stop waiting for it to change before shifting her energy toward it. At first, it felt absurd. How could she be grateful for something that felt like a burden? But something inside her softened. She began small. She thanked the job for being there, for putting food on her table, for giving her structure in a time of chaos. And day by day, her energy shifted. Her focus moved from what was lacking to what was still present. And as her inner landscape changed, so did her outer reality. Her performance improved, her attitude elevated, and within weeks, she was offered a better position, something she hadn't even pursued. It wasn't coincidence, it was alignment, because the moment you shift from resentment to reverence, you unlock new paths that were always there, waiting for you to see them. This is the impact of choosing to bless instead of blame, of making the decision to honor your current reality, not because it's perfect, but because it's part of your evolution. Gratitude isn't just a reaction to something pleasant, it's a creative force that expands whatever it touches. That's why it works even in scarcity, especially in scarcity, because it changes the lens through which you see yourself and your possibilities. And if you've ever felt stuck, like you're giving everything and getting nothing in return, it's not always about doing more. Sometimes, it's about pausing, looking at what's already in front of you, and blessing it, fully, consciously. That's when things begin to move. That's when the atmosphere shifts. Not from pressure, but from permission. Permission to thrive exactly where you are, so life can respond to who you've become. Put down in the comments, "I'm learning to bless what I have." Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the connection between your thoughts and your physical body is not just metaphorical, it's biological, emotional, and deeply spiritual. The body listens. It always has. It responds not just to medication or movement, but to emotion, to belief, to the silent signals you send it through your attention. And one of the most overlooked messages you can offer it, one of the most healing, is gratitude. There was a man like many who found himself slipping into a slow decline. Fatigue, tension, vague symptoms no doctor could quite explain. Nothing dramatic, but enough to drain his energy and dull his joy. He had become so focused on what wasn't working that he forgot to see what still was, until he was invited to try something radically simple. Give thanks for 5 parts of his body that still functioned well, every morning, every night, not as a performance, not as wishful thinking, but with sincerity, with reverence. At first he struggled to find 5. His focus had been so narrowly trained on pain that he'd lost sight of everything else. But then he remembered his hands, still strong, his eyes, still clear, his lungs, still breathing. Slowly the list grew, and as he gave those parts his attention, his appreciation, his blessing, something shifted. Not just emotionally, physically. He started to feel lighter, his posture changed, he reported deeper sleep, a calmer mind, a steadier heartbeat. Was it magic? No. It was alignment, the body responding to care instead of criticism. That's the hidden truth. Your body isn't just a vehicle, it's a living partner in your journey, and it listens closely to how you treat it, not only with food or rest, but with words, with thoughts, with the internal dialogue you repeat silently every day. If that dialogue is filled with resentment, frustration, or self-judgment, the body contracts, it retreats, it mirrors that resistance. But if you meet it with gratitude, even in imperfection, even in illness, something different happens. It opens, it receives, it begins to regenerate, not always in dramatic ways, but in meaningful ones. Gratitude doesn't require you to pretend nothing is wrong. It simply invites you not to make the problem your home. You can acknowledge what's out of balance without anchoring your entire identity there. You can be honest about the struggle and still speak life into your cells. Because gratitude is not denial, it's declaration. It says, even here, something good remains. Even now, something is working on my behalf. And this shift in perspective, it's not superficial. It's not about masking discomfort. It's about rewiring your relationship with what you experience. You stop fighting your body and start partnering with it. You stop waiting for perfection and begin honoring the miracle that's already unfolding inside you, one breath at a time. That simple act of noticing what is still vibrant, still functional, still alive, it's powerful, it's transformative. It creates space for healing where there was once only tension. So much of what we call stuck in life begins as resistance. Resisting the moment, the condition, the process. But what if, instead of resisting, you chose to bless? What if you acknowledged the challenge, but refused to let it define your energy? That choice shifts everything. Not because the problem vanishes, but because your power returns. You reclaim the right to feel peace without waiting for every detail to resolve. Put down in the comments, "My body hears me." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding the inner mechanism is one thing, but practicing it is where the real shift begins. Gratitude isn't just a beautiful idea or an inspiring concept. It's a training of perception, a choice that must be made over and over again until it rewires how you move through your reality. That's why something as simple as a daily gratitude inventory has the power to alter the trajectory of your entire mindset. Not because of what it adds, but because of what it reveals. You don't realize how much you're missing until you begin to notice. That's the subtle magic behind sitting down each morning and writing out 10 things you're grateful for. Not rushing through it like a checklist, but pausing, really pausing, to feel each one. Your breath, your roof, the quiet, a name in your phone, the softness of your blanket. A lesson you didn't expect to learn. The more specific you get, the more your awareness sharpens. Suddenly, things that once felt invisible begin to glow. And in that space, your frequency rises, not in a forced way, but in a grounded, honest way. It's not about pretending that life is always easy. It's about retraining your nervous system to recognize safety, stability, and support, even in the smallest, most ordinary moments. That's the hidden truth. Miracles often begin in the mundane. They don't always arrive with trumpets. They sneak in quietly when you're paying attention. And this is something Jesus exemplified with such clarity. Before the miracle, he gave thanks. Not after. Before the crowd was fed. Before the blind could see. Before Lazarus walked, he aligned with the outcome through gratitude. That's not poetic. It's instructional. He didn't wait for the evidence to believe. He believed in the presence of a higher order, and that belief was sealed with gratitude. This is a behind-the-scenes glimpse into spiritual law. Gratitude isn't just a mood. It's a key that unlocks a state where divine patterns can unfold. Because it removes resistance. It clears out the mental clutter of doubt, fear, and urgency, making room for something higher to move. And that movement doesn't come because we're pleading for it. It comes because we've chosen to meet life with openness instead of defensiveness. So what happens when you start your day not by reacting to the noise, but by naming what's already here, already good, already working? You begin to build a lens of receptivity, not just in thought, but in energy. You stop bracing for what might go wrong and start leaning into what's already aligned. And that shift ripples outward. Your tone changes. Your interactions shift. You stop chasing and start magnetizing. Because you're no longer asking the world to fill you, you're showing up already full. This is the power of daily gratitude. It's not just reflection, it's preparation. You're preparing your inner space to receive what your mind alone could never orchestrate. And like Jesus lifting his eyes and saying, "Thank you," before anything changed, You step into that same frequency when you choose to say thank you before the blessing arrives. Not because you're naive, but because you're in tune with something deeper, something wiser, something already in motion. Put down in the comments, I'm choosing to notice the good. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you begin to understand how the invisible world shapes the visible one, your entire relationship with reality starts to shift. We've been taught to believe that life changes from the outside in, that once we get the job, the partner, the healing, the clarity, then we'll feel secure, happy, fulfilled. But that's not how spiritual law works. The truth is, everything changes from the inside out, and at the core of that transformation is a principle so simple, it often gets overlooked: the law of mental equivalence. This isn't about wishful thinking or blind optimism, it's about alignment. You can't receive what you're not prepared to hold internally. What you visualize and feel as real, before it's visible, becomes the mold through which life pours form. The vibration of your inner world sets the tone for what comes next. And gratitude? Gratitude is the emotional confirmation that you already believe it's done. It's not about hoping something will arrive. It's about stepping into the energy of someone who already knows it has. That emotional state is the signal you send, and life, always faithful, mirrors back the quality of that signal. Not the words, not the effort, but the being behind it. That's exactly what Jesus demonstrated during the multiplication of the loaves. He didn't panic. He didn't plead. He didn't see lack. He saw abundance through the little. He took what was there, raised it, gave thanks, and then acted as if the outcome was inevitable. That's not metaphor. That's instruction. He aligned with what he already saw in spirit, gave thanks from that state, and reality conformed to it. The bread didn't multiply because he needed it to. It multiplied because he expected it to. He wasn't wishing. He was remembering. And gratitude was the bridge between that inner certainty and the outer result. This is the hidden truth behind so many moments in life that we brush off as coincidence or timing. The things that arrive after we finally let go, or stop obsessing, or shift into a more peaceful mindset. It wasn't luck, it was law. You relaxed the grip, the energy cleared, and something greater could finally flow. Gratitude accelerates that process, not because it pressures the universe, but because it signals trust. It whispers, I'm no longer bracing, I'm receiving. And receiving isn't passive, it's a conscious decision. It requires you to create space, not just in your calendar or in your home, but in your energy. You can't hold new blessings if your inner atmosphere is still congested with doubt, scarcity, or resistance. That's why the emotional charge matters. You could visualize for hours, but if deep down you're still anchored in disbelief, the image doesn't imprint. But one moment of sincere, felt gratitude, of real embodiment, can imprint the entire blueprint. Because in that moment, you're no longer trying to believe. You are the belief. You're no longer asking for proof. You've become the evidence. That's the level where manifestation accelerates, not through hustle or obsession, but through resonance. And every time you choose to give thanks before the evidence shows up, you're rehearsing the energy of fulfillment. You're training your system to hold the frequency of what you say you want. And that consistency begins to draw what matches it, piece by piece, moment by moment. Put down in the comments, I'm learning to feel it before I see it. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what we're looking at here is not just spiritual discipline, it's a profound revelation about how power, trust, and divine timing actually operate. There's something striking about the way Jesus moved through life, not from a place of urgency or fear, but from deep presence and unwavering inner authority. He didn't perform acts of faith after witnessing results. He acted as if it was already done. And what sealed that certainty wasn't control, it was gratitude. Picture the moment before Lazarus rose. A man had been dead for days. The air was thick with disbelief, mourning, and impossibility. And before anything happened, before there was a shift in atmosphere or a stir in the tomb, Jesus lifted his eyes and said, "Thank you, Father." He didn't beg. He didn't explain. He didn't dramatize. That thank you wasn't performance, it was a declaration, a coded message of faith spoken in the language of alignment. He wasn't waiting to see the outcome to believe. He believed, and that belief, expressed as gratitude, was the key that opened the unseen door. It's easy to overlook the subtle but massive power in that moment. Gratitude was not a reaction to the miracle, it was the activation of it. That single thank you was the vibration that said, I trust the order behind what appears chaotic. I see the light behind what seems final. And when you tap into that energy, when you thank life before it gives you what you asked for, you become a participant in that same creative law. You stop waiting for external signs to affirm your inner truth. You live as though it's already unfolding, and in that resonance, things begin to respond. This wasn't an isolated event. Even at the Last Supper, on the edge of betrayal and suffering, Jesus gave thanks, not because things were easy, not because everything felt safe, but because his inner posture wasn't rooted in circumstance. It was anchored in divine trust. Imagine knowing what's ahead: abandonment, injustice, pain, and still offering thanks. That's not delusion. That's alignment. That's spiritual clarity that sees through the temporary into the eternal. There's a kind of maturity that comes when you stop linking your gratitude to outcomes, when you no longer need the outside world to look a certain way in order to feel connected, supported, or whole. That's when gratitude becomes less of a reaction and more of a home, a place you return to not because life has proven itself, but because you've remembered who you are within it, and that shift changes how you interpret everything. Challenges aren't punishments, they're invitations. Delays aren't denials, they're recalibrations. Even grief, when met with reverence, reveals hidden layers of grace. Gratitude, in that context, becomes more than just a practice. It becomes a portal, a way of walking through this world with open eyes and a steady heart, even when everything around you feels uncertain. When you operate from that space, your presence starts to carry something different. Not the intensity of someone trying to make life obey, but the peace of someone who already knows it's unfolding with intelligence, even when they can't see how. And in that space, your thank you carries more weight than any request ever could. Write in the comments, I'm choosing trust over control. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you grasp this subtle but powerful shift in the order of things, you begin to move differently, not with desperation, but with quiet certainty. Most people are waiting for life to give them a reason to feel good, a reason to believe, a reason to trust. But the spiritual law that governs true manifestation flips that logic entirely. You don't feel grateful because it's arrived. You feel it as if it already has. That's where the shift begins. That's when the internal world sets the tone, and the external world follows. To manifest anything, peace, healing, love, abundance, you don't start by chasing it. You start by embodying the version of you who already lives inside that reality. That version of you isn't grasping or wishing. They are anchored in the energy of completion. Gratitude is what makes that energy tangible. It's not just an emotion, it's evidence. It's the felt sense that what you've asked for is already in motion, already unfolding, already yours on the level that matters most. And this is where the chimney analogy becomes so clear. You wouldn't sit in front of a cold fireplace and say, I'll feel warm once the fire appears. You know the heat doesn't come first. The fire does. And the fire doesn't spark unless you light it. Gratitude is that flame. The miracle is the heat it gives off. And waiting to feel grateful until you see the outcome is like demanding warmth before striking the match. It never works that way. But when you give thanks first, authentically, intentionally, you ignite something. And that ignition begins to ripple through the layers of your life, unseen at first, but unstoppable once it starts moving. This is the hidden truth behind so many delayed dreams. It's not that they're blocked by lack of effort, or that the universe is withholding. It's that the energy you're broadcasting is still rooted in absence. The dominant frequency is not yet, not enough, not here, and that vibration creates more of itself. But when you begin to train your nervous system, your imagination, your words, and your posture to reflect the state of already having, everything begins to shift. the world rearranges itself to meet the level of your belief. This isn't about pretending, it's about choosing to step into a vibration of certainty, even when your senses offer no confirmation yet. Because you're not operating based on appearances, you're operating based on alignment. You're moving from within. And that kind of movement is magnetic. You begin to walk with less tension and more grace. You release the timeline. You stop trying to squeeze answers from life, and instead let life respond to your state. Because when you hold gratitude sincerely, not mechanically, but from the deepest place in you, it begins to speak louder than doubt ever could. It becomes your baseline, your steady hum. And from that place, miracles don't feel like surprises. They feel like natural results of your internal coherence. Write in the comments, "I've lit the fire within." Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because here lies one of the most misunderstood truths about manifestation, something that many overlook while trying to force outcomes or chase results. The power of gratitude isn't in making things happen. It's in aligning you with what's already been written for your highest path. There's a difference between trying to manipulate life into obeying your plans and stepping into resonance with what was always meant for you. Gratitude doesn't twist reality. It tunes you into it. When you're truly in that space of inner harmony, you're no longer begging the universe. You're listening to it. And instead of trying to control the pieces, you begin to recognize the rhythm underneath them. You stop asking, "How can I make this happen?" and start asking, "How can I align with what's already mine?" That subtle but powerful shift creates a new atmosphere around you, one where synchronicities replace struggle and divine timing replaces constant effort. This is what Emmet Fox meant by creative consciousness. The moment you begin to visualize what you desire with real emotion, not fantasy, not hope, but felt conviction, and you bless it, you breathe life into that reality. You're not waiting for proof, you're becoming the proof. Because in that inner moment, the manifestation begins, not outside, but within you, and the universe, always a mirror, begins responding to the image you've impressed upon it. This process isn't about pretending something exists when it doesn't. It's about recognizing that all creation begins in the invisible, that everything physical first existed as energy, intention, or thought. The house was once a blueprint. The relationship was once a hope. The healing was once a vision. And what transforms a vision into matter isn't desperation. It's alignment. When you bless something in advance, when you thank life before it gives you what you asked for, you're sending a clear signal. I'm ready to receive. I'm no longer fighting against the current. I'm flowing with it. That's the spiritual maturity behind true manifestation. It's not pushing. It's preparing. It's not hustling. It's harmonizing. You're not demanding. You're declaring. And here's the hidden truth. Not everything you desire is meant to manifest in the way you imagined it. That's where trust comes in. Gratitude keeps your energy open even when the form changes, because what's real for you, what serves your evolution, your peace, your deep fulfillment, won't be missed, but you can delay it by staying out of alignment. Gratitude softens that resistance. It creates space for the right outcome to enter. Maybe not the one you had in mind, but the one that's truer, richer, and far more aligned than what you thought you needed. So when you practice this, when you visualize with emotion, when you give thanks as if it's already done, you're not just trying to be positive. You're engaging a deeper law. You're becoming the version of you that matches the reality you long for. And once that version is stabilized within, reality has no choice but to adjust. Write in the comments, "I'm aligned with what's already mine." Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what we're touching on here goes far beyond just thinking positively or hoping for the best. We're talking about stepping into a completely different posture toward life, one rooted not in the anxiety of lack, but in the calm, unwavering presence of certainty. And that certainty doesn't come from seeing proof. It comes from being aligned with truth before it's visible. This is the heart of true faith, not belief in possibility, but awareness of completion. When Jesus gave thanks before the miracle, he wasn't testing the universe. He was moving from a knowing so profound that doubt had no ground to stand on. His thank you wasn't a hopeful gesture. It was a declaration, a spiritual technology that shifted the frequency of the moment. And that's what living in the certainty looks like. It's when your energy carries the message, it is already done, and your gratitude is simply the echo of that awareness. This is where mindset becomes more than a buzzword. It becomes the very mechanism through which transformation occurs. Because when your internal state is stabilized in faith, your decisions, reactions, even your timing begins to synchronize with divine intelligence. You move not as someone chasing a breakthrough, but as someone walking within one. And that subtle shift, from striving to embodiment, changes everything. It's not about pretending you're not afraid. It's about choosing a deeper reality than fear. Gratitude isn't a denial of obstacles. It's a recognition that you are no longer defined by them. You are already beyond them in spirit, and your outer life is simply catching up. This is the behind-the-scenes truth of manifestation. It doesn't start with effort. It starts with alignment. And this is why felt gratitude activates the law, not forced gratitude, not recited affirmations without emotion, but real-rooted sensory gratitude, the kind that sends a signal into the field of creation. I've already received. I don't need to chase it. That's when the law begins to respond in ways you couldn't predict, through people, timing, doors you didn't even know existed. But it starts with how you feel now. Most people delay this feeling. They say, I'll be grateful when it happens. But spiritually speaking, that's backwards. Gratitude isn't the effect, it's the cause. It's the ignition point. It's the evidence that you trust more in what you know spiritually than what you see physically. And that's the kind of trust that makes things move. Not because you're controlling them, but because you've surrendered the illusion that they were ever out of reach. You're not waiting, you're embodying. And in that embodiment, what you once called a desire becomes a recognition, a reunion. You're no longer begging the future. You're welcoming what's always been yours. Put down in the comments, it's already done. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because here is where the real alchemy begins, where practice turns into transformation, and where mindset becomes a portal to true inner power. Anticipatory gratitude isn't just a cute spiritual trick or a positive habit to add to your morning routine. It's an energetic rehearsal of your future reality, one that carries the same weight, intensity, and conviction as if the manifestation had already occurred. It's a behind-the-scenes activation of the law of becoming. When you write down a goal with clarity, not vague hope, but with the specific vibration of intention, and then give thanks for it with full emotion, you're doing something very few people do. You're bypassing the limited logic of, if this happens, then I'll feel good, and stepping into the reversal of that equation. Because I feel it now, it becomes real. That 7-minute window of heartfelt gratitude begins to program your subconscious. And it's the subconscious, not willpower, that runs the show. Most people are constantly reacting to what already exists, but the ones who create meaningful change in their lives have learned to respond to what's not visible yet, as if it were already present. That's the secret behind many of the world's most profound inner transformations. The ability to emotionally anchor in a truth the senses haven't caught up to yet, to feel it real, not in theory, but in the body, in the breath, in the heartbeat. This is the kind of gratitude that moves mountains, not because it forces anything to happen, but because it clears the inner fog that was preventing you from receiving what was already circling your life. And here's where we have to draw a clear line. Surface gratitude doesn't work. Saying thank you without emotional charge is like mailing a letter with no address. It doesn't go anywhere. The universe responds not to the sound of your words, but to the energy behind them. The subconscious doesn't speak language. It speaks feeling. That's why you can affirm abundance all day long and still live in lack, because the emotion under the words is fear, not fulfillment. Real gratitude hums at a different frequency. It's not desperate. It's not frantic. It doesn't carry the smell of spiritual bargaining. It's calm, whole, certain. It says, this is already unfolding for me, and I'm open to it now. It softens the nervous system. It recalibrates your decisions. It upgrades your perception of what's possible. And that changes everything, not just spiritually, but biologically. your chemistry shifts, your posture changes, your voice sounds different. People respond to you differently, not because the world changed, but because you did. When you feel this level of gratitude, you don't just visualize a better life, you begin to live from it. Your thoughts stop asking for signs and start radiating them. Your inner dialogue stops echoing old limitations and starts mirroring divine potential. It's a total rewiring, not through force, but through presence. Write in the comments, "I can feel it already." Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because this is the point where words stop being just words and become instruments of transformation. There's something extraordinary that happens when verbal expression is merged with authentic feeling. It's not about repeating mantras or affirmations like a robot. It's about matching the frequency of your voice with the vibration of your soul. When the word "thank you" rises not from obligation, but from truth, when it carries the charge of genuine feeling, what you're speaking isn't just sound. It's energy in motion. It's intention taking form. This is where miracles are born, not in the repetition, but in the resonance. It's like tuning a radio. You can say all the right words, but if you're not emotionally tuned in, all you're sending out is static. But when the feeling is real, when you feel the depth of gratitude down to your core, something clicks. You enter alignment, and in that alignment, reality responds differently. It's not a coincidence, it's law, because feeling is the language of creation, and when thought and emotion meet, they create what ancient mystics called the Word made flesh. But here's the hidden truth that many spiritual seekers overlook. Gratitude isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's not about denying your struggles or dismissing your grief. That's not gratitude. That's spiritual bypassing. Real gratitude does not say, "This pain doesn't exist." It says, "Even here, even now, I am open to a higher perspective. I trust there is something working beneath the surface." You can feel sadness and still be grateful. You can face uncertainty and still anchor in gratitude. Because this isn't about denying what is, it's about transcending it. Gratitude doesn't erase your humanity. It infuses your experience with divine power. It allows you to hold both truth and possibility at once, the reality of your present and the potential of what's forming beyond it. And that potential? It becomes real the moment your gratitude becomes real. The moment your words are no longer hollow echoes, but living expressions of trust. That's the moment the universe leans in. That's when your inner atmosphere changes, quietly, steadily, and everything begins to shift in response. You don't have to force it. You don't have to fake it. All you have to do is feel it. Even for just a breath, even for just one moment that says, "I see the gift," even if it's hidden. That single moment can start a chain reaction, because feeling is what plants the seed, but sustained gratitude is what makes it bloom. So if you've been speaking thanks without feeling them, you haven't failed. You've just been warming up. Now is the time to slow down and feel your words before you speak them. Let them come from a place of alignment, not performance. Let them be real. Let them mean something. Put down in the comments, "Now I understand the power behind the feeling." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because this is where something subtle begins to unfold. A quiet but powerful shift from doing gratitude to being gratitude. It's one thing to say "thank you" as a conscious act, to sit down and make your gratitude list, or to whisper appreciation before a meal. But what happens when gratitude stops being an occasional practice and becomes the very lens through which you perceive the world? It starts with presence. And presence is everything. When you pause before uttering "thank you," when you close your eyes, take a breath, and truly feel the sensation of appreciation, not as a thought, but as a vibration, something awakens inside you. You're not just acknowledging a good moment, you're becoming aware of the divine current running beneath every moment, even the ones that don't look or feel the way you wish they would. That pause, that breath, isn't small, it's sacred, because it gives space for your body to speak before your words do. And when the body aligns with the spirit, truth flows out effortlessly. But this isn't meant to be reserved for special occasions. The transformation happens when this moment of stillness becomes a pattern, when it stops being something you try to do and starts being something you are. That's when gratitude crosses a threshold. It evolves. It stops being an action and becomes a presence, a quiet fire that burns within you, no matter what storms pass outside. And here's where the hidden truth reveals itself. Real gratitude is not reactive. It doesn't depend on life being perfect. It doesn't require conditions to be met. It exists because your soul recognizes the truth behind the illusion. That you are supported, that something wiser is moving through you, even when you can't see the outcome. Gratitude, in its highest form, becomes praise. Not the kind of praise you're taught in rituals or hymns, but the spontaneous reverence that erupts from within you simply because you know. You know you're part of something infinite. You know your breath is not random. You know that even your pain holds meaning. And because of that knowing, gratitude isn't something you remember to do anymore. It's something you can't not do. It pours out of you when the sun rises. It moves through you when someone smiles at you unexpectedly. It radiates even when things break, because you've come to trust that the breaking is sacred too. It's no longer a discipline. It's a vibration, a state, a song that plays from your spirit without needing a reason. Write in the comments, "I choose to live in this vibration." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because this is where the transformation begins to leave the realm of concept and enters the daily rhythm of your life. Gratitude, when truly internalized, isn't just a spiritual exercise. It becomes an atmosphere you carry with you. Imagine it like incense. Not the kind you light once and watch fade, but the kind that never stops burning. A sacred fragrance that silently follows you, no matter where you go or what you face. That's what happens when gratitude is no longer reactive, but becomes your signature energy. This isn't about faking joy or pretending you're fine when you're not. It's about accessing a deeper knowing, a vibration beneath circumstance that keeps whispering, "There is meaning here, even if it's hidden." That whisper is the incense. That awareness is the fragrance. And once it begins to rise from within you, it starts to shift everything: your posture, your words, your relationships, even the way time feels. Life becomes less about chasing and more about recognizing. You stop begging for signs and start noticing the ones already around you. And here's something beautifully simple, but radically powerful. Try living one day in that energy. Just one. From the moment you open your eyes, let every thought, every movement, every breath carry thankfulness. Not performative gratitude, but presence-filled awareness. Thank your bed for holding you through the night. Thank the silence for greeting you with stillness. Thank the moments that trigger you, because even they are pulling something buried to the surface to be healed. Thank the weather, the traffic, the noise. Thank your body for continuing, despite the weight it may carry. Thank the interruptions, because each one is an invitation to return to now. What begins as a practice becomes a kind of alchemy. You're no longer reacting to life, you're creating it from the inside out. And the real secret, this rewires your perception. Not overnight, but unmistakably. The world doesn't need to change. You do. And as your inner lens shifts, life rearranges itself to match that vibration. What once felt like burden begins to reveal itself as blessing in disguise. Opportunities you never noticed before start appearing. People respond to your energy differently, not because they've changed, but because you have. And something sacred starts to happen behind the scenes. Your nervous system relaxes, your decisions become cleaner, your intuition sharpens, and you begin to move with more grace and less force. You stop gripping and start flowing. You stop waiting for proof to be grateful, and realize that gratitude is the proof. It's the evidence of trust already alive in you. And when that trust becomes consistent, so do the results. Put down in the comments, "I'm also on this path." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because at this stage, we're not just talking about gratitude as a virtue, but as a doorway, a portal, a direct access point to something sacred that already surrounds you. When Jesus spoke the words, "Thy kingdom come," he wasn't referring to a far-off paradise in the clouds or a future reward reserved for the worthy. He was pointing to something closer, something immediate, something alive in the now. But often, missed by eyes too focused on struggle, on lack, on delay. The kingdom doesn't need to arrive, it already has. But it can only be seen by the one who's willing to recognize it, and that recognition isn't intellectual. It doesn't come from analysis or memorized doctrine. It comes from a shift in perception that only gratitude can ignite, because gratitude in its purest form isn't just saying thank you for what's good. It's saying thank you because you see through the surface of things. You see what's hidden behind the chaos, beneath the fear, inside the uncertainty. And what you see there isn't absence, it's presence, divine presence, kingdom presence. This is the hidden truth so many overlook, that what we've been waiting for has been waiting for us. That the peace we chase is buried under layers of resistance and complaint. That heaven isn't a destination, it's a decision. A daily decision to recognize the divine in the ordinary, to treat each moment like holy ground, to respond to the smallest grace with the greatest reverence. Because when you live like that, you don't need a miracle. You become one. Heaven reveals itself to the grateful not because they're lucky, but because they're looking. Their eyes are trained to see beauty in places others dismiss. They're sensitive to signs most walk past. They listen between the lines. They touch life with gentleness, they speak with intention, and they breathe as if each breath was gifted by something much higher than them, because it was. When you live in this energy, you begin to experience a paradox. You still walk the same streets, have the same job, face the same bills, but something has shifted. The world feels lighter. The noise is less loud. Your problems haven't disappeared, but they've lost their power to define you. And that shift, that inner movement, is the beginning of heaven on earth. It doesn't mean you've escaped life. It means you've finally arrived fully inside it. And that's the revelation, hidden in plain sight. Heaven isn't something that happens after death. It's something that's unlocked through awareness. And gratitude is the key. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's powerful. Because it doesn't beg for more. It declares enough. And that declaration opens the gates. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because we're not just talking about gratitude as a habit anymore. We're stepping into sacred territory. We're uncovering the language that creation responds to. Not English, not Spanish, not even the ancient tongues carved into temple walls. The true language of the divine is vibration. And the vibration of gratitude speaks louder than any ritual, any memorized verse, or shouted plea. Gratitude isn't something you say, it's something you become. When you feel it genuinely, it alters your frequency. It's not about repeating a phrase with your mouth, it's about aligning your energy with the very source of life. It's as if your soul starts humming in harmony with the creative intelligence of the universe. That's why in moments of true thanks, everything quiets, time slows, and something deeper, something ancient and infinite, takes over. You've probably felt it before. That sensation when you're overwhelmed with appreciation and nothing else matters. Not the outcome, not the timing, not the how. Just that raw, beautiful recognition that you are seen, held, and supported by something bigger than logic. In that state, words become unnecessary, because you're no longer praying for something, you're living inside the answer. This is why begging, pleading, or bargaining with God often leaves us empty. Not because God isn't listening, but because we're speaking in a language of lack, a language of absence. But when you replace that with gratitude, when you shift into the frequency of "thank you because I know it is done," the entire dynamic transforms. You stop chasing miracles and start magnetizing them. You stop being the seeker and start being the vessel. The hidden truth is this: every time you beg, you affirm that you do not yet have. But every time you give thanks, you declare that you already do. That subtle difference is the axis on which manifestation turns. It's the backstage access to how divine power works. And the irony is that it doesn't come from striving harder, being more holy, or saying the right formula. It comes from surrender, from trust, from resting in the knowing that all is well because you are already one with the source of all good. So when you sit in silence, and your heart whispers, "Thank you," that's not just sentiment, that's creation happening. That's heaven leaning in. That's the bridge between the visible and the invisible forming under your feet. Not because you demanded it, but because you remembered who you are. Put down, I'm also on this path. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because this is where gratitude stops being a tool and starts becoming a transformation. Up until now, we've been learning how to use gratitude, how to activate it, how to feel it, how to let it open doors. But there's something even more profound hiding behind the scenes. Gratitude is not just something you express, it's something you can become, and that changes everything. When you shift from doing gratitude to being gratitude, the weight you've carried begins to fall away, almost without effort. The resentment, the guilt, the tight grip of the past, it can't survive in the presence of true thankfulness. Not the superficial kind, but the kind that rises from your soul like breath you forgot you were holding. This is the hidden truth most people miss. You don't need to fight for healing. You just need to stop feeding the pain and start feeding the light. And gratitude is the light. Think about the wounds you've carried, those memories you still replay, those names that still sting when you hear them. Maybe you've tried to forgive with logic, with willpower, with distance, but nothing softens that tight knot in your chest like the unexpected feeling of genuine gratitude. Gratitude for what you learned, for how it shaped you, even for the pain itself, because without it, you wouldn't have cracked open enough to seek the peace you now long for. And in that space, right where you thought you'd break, you find healing. Not because someone said sorry, not because justice was served, but because you chose to bless the lesson instead of curse the experience. That's liberation. Forgiveness isn't always an act of morality. Sometimes, it's an act of alignment. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you do. Because bitterness is too heavy for someone who's ready to fly. And when you practice gratitude, not as an idea but as an energetic state, you begin to dissolve the walls that separated you from peace. It's no longer about who was right or wrong. It becomes about who's ready to be free. This is what it means to become gratitude. It's not about saying thank you when things go your way. It's about being thank you no matter how the day unfolds. It's about becoming the kind of presence that turns pain into perspective, scarcity into serenity, and wounds into wisdom. You're no longer reacting to life. You're radiating through it. And once that shift happens, the world begins to respond in kind. Not because the universe is rewarding you, but because you're no longer resisting it. You're aligned. You're open. You're receptive. Gratitude has restructured your reality from the inside out. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." If you've stayed with me all the way here, it probably means this message stirred something deeper in you, and that's no coincidence. These aren't just words. They're reminders of what your soul already knows. So if this resonated, go ahead and hit that like button. Not out of habit, but as a quiet acknowledgement of the connection we just created. And if you want more moments like this, where something inside you clicks into place, consider subscribing. That way, you'll always have a space to return to whenever you need clarity or calm. Also, let me know in the comments if you made it to the end. Just write, "This message was meant for me." I rate everyone, and it's a beautiful way to know who's walking this path with me. There's a video right here that complements everything we explored today. Click and continue with me over there.